Today, I will discuss a crime case that will boggle your mind. I'm sure you have never seen anything like this in your life. This is the true story of a male nurse who was believed to be a woman for years. When 60-year-old Shukran Aktash was found dead at home, her body was sent to the forensic department to investigate whether her death was suspicious. Accompanying her daughter to the autopsy, the husband and the doctors were shocked when they said that the deceased was not a woman but a man. Shukran Aktash's daughter, Tansu, was in complete disbelief, thinking it was a mistake, as she had believed all her life that she was Shukran Aktash's biological daughter. Even Shukran Aktash's husband was in disbelief, saying, "How is this possible? She was my wife, and Tansu is our biological daughter." However, the doctors knew it was not possible because, although it wasn't widely reported in the media, the forensic report revealed that Shukran Aktash had a penis. How could this person, who was biologically male, have been using the identity of a woman named Shukran Aktash registered in the system? Before a media ban was imposed on the case, the real Shukran Aktaş was found on a reality and crime show called Müge Anlı in Turkey, and it was revealed that the real Shukran Aktaş had lost her identity card 10 years prior. Shortly after, it was discovered that the nurse, known for years as a woman, was actually a man named Nail C. Right after this revelation, the government imposed a media ban on the case, and we didn't hear any more updates. That is until 2 years later, when another woman named Aysel Bashar came forward on the same program, seeking to uncover her own tragic story. Now, let's briefly go over Aysel Bashar's story and see how these two seemingly separate cases intersect. In late February 1994, Aysel Bashar, who was 24 years old, gave birth to her third child, a baby girl, at Çorlu State Hospital. However, just 12 hours after the birth, while everyone was asleep in the room where the mother stayed, the baby was kidnapped. Eyewitnesses reported that a woman dressed as a nurse took the baby and left in a white car waiting in front of the hospital. The father, who was deaf and mute, was unaware of the events as he had gone to work after leaving his wife at the hospital for delivery. Upon returning to the hospital after his shift, he learned that the baby had been stolen. They had named the baby Funda. In her first statement, Aysel Bashar said, "I had fallen asleep, and while I was sleeping, people woke me up and told me my baby was kidnapped. I wasn't aware of anything that happened during the abduction." A criminal investigation was launched, and it was determined that the baby was taken during the doctor's lunch break. According to eyewitness accounts, a well-groomed, large woman dressed in a nurse's uniform entered the hospital's emergency entrance at 12:40 p.m. and proceeded to the maternity ward. She tried to take babies from the new mothers, claiming she was going to give them formula, but no one handed over their baby. Later, when she entered Aysel Bashar's room, she saw that Aysel was asleep, seized the opportunity, and took the baby. 23 years after this incident, Aysel Bashar came across a news report about a nurse while watching the reality and crime show Müge Anlı in Turkey. In the report, a body had been brought to the forensic department, and while investigating whether the death was suspicious, a shocking truth came to light. The forensic doctors revealed that the deceased was actually male. The story then took a bizarre turn, as Aysel Bashar, who saw the photos of this so-called female nurse, said that the person strongly resembled the woman who was described as abducting her baby years ago. The nurse, who had lived her life as a woman but was revealed to be a man upon her death, was Shukran Aktaş, also known as Nail C, who lived in the Kumburgaz district of Istanbul. The distance between Kumburgaz and Çorlu State Hospital, where the baby was kidnapped, was only about a 2-hour drive. Nail C, who was born as a male but lived as a woman, was known in the community as Handan Kaya, the owner of a small boutique named Handan's Boutique. How had this person managed to hide their true gender for so many years? Later, reporters from the Muga Anla program mentioned that the local people knew the person known as Handan Kaya was a man, and when she suddenly appeared with a baby, rumors spread that she had stolen the baby from the hospital because she was known to have worked there as a nurse. However, they added that the only basis for this rumor was that she worked at the hospital as a nurse, and no one knew for sure where the baby had actually come from. It is known that the mentioned baby was stolen from Chorlu State Hospital, but at this point, new information arises that leaves everyone wondering, could this baby be Tansu, whom Nail C raised as her own daughter? Because the person we now know as Nail C was also born in Chorlu. Could that be why she chose Chorlu State Hospital, even though there was a hospital closer to where she lived, to steal a baby? Or was all of this just a coincidence? The stolen baby was born in 1994, and the nurse, who lived as a woman but was actually a man, had a baby who was also born in 1994. Could the baby stolen from the hospital really be the child raised by this nurse who lived for years under the identity of Shukran Aktash? Even the co-workers who had worked alongside Nail C for years were shocked by the revelation of her true gender. Not only had they never suspected she wasn't a woman, but they hadn't even realized she wasn't a real nurse. Despite all this, could it be that even her husband hadn't known she was not a woman? Or was he somehow complicit in all of this? A woman who had known Nail C during the years when she still lived as a man called into the Muga Unlu program and made some striking claims. She said that Nail frequently asked her to secretly buy razor blades for him, and he used to attend gatherings of women where they would eat, chat, and spend the day together. However, after about a year, the women began to grow suspicious of Nail's overly feminine behavior, and once their suspicions mounted, Nail emptied her home and fled without leaving a trace. At that time, it was not common in Turkey for men to transition into women. Many people who knew about these incredible events later called into the program and confirmed the same dates and events, which aligned with the story. So, in which years did this person, now known as Nail C, live as a man, and when did she start living as a woman? Nail C, who lived under the identity of Shukran Aktash and was known as Handan Kaya in Kumburgaz, first moved to Istanbul's Kumburgaz neighborhood in 1979. However, when she first arrived, she was a man with short hair and reportedly lived as a man for 2 years. Then, she disappeared for a while, and when she returned in 1981, she had assumed the identity of a woman named Handan Kaya. When she returned as Handan Kaya, she had not undergone gender reassignment surgery. When she wore a swimsuit at the beach, her penis was visibly apparent. Later, there was no documentation confirming that she underwent gender reassignment surgery. Apart from this, however, she looked completely like a woman. 13 years later, she claimed to have given birth to a baby, and even before appearing with the baby, she had been walking around for months, pretending to be pregnant. However, someone who had known her before and knew that she was once a man asked her how this was possible. She responded by saying that she had adopted a child from a very poor family. An eyewitness who saw the baby when it was just 2 weeks old said that it was the early spring of 1994. Although she could clearly remember the year, she wasn't exactly sure which month it was, but she did remember it was spring, as the trees were in bloom. The more this story was investigated, the more complicated it became. When Nail C was living under the identity of Handan Kaya, it was thought that she had made up the name, but further investigations revealed that there were bank transactions, invoices, and receipts under this name. So, who was the real Handan Kaya? Since Nail C had started using this identity before the digital registration system was implemented, it was never clear whether the real Handan Kaya existed or if this was a false identity inserted into the system. While all of this remained a mystery, A forensic report was released exactly 1 year after Nail C's death. The report concluded that there were no unusual circumstances surrounding the death of the person who had been brought to the forensic department under the name Shukran Aktash and was identified as Nail C. It was determined that she had died of natural causes. How had she managed to work as a nurse in some of Turkey's largest and most prestigious hospitals without actually being a qualified nurse? What had Nail C, who had lived under the identity of a female nurse named Handan Kaya before running a boutique, done to the real Handan Kaya? This was never solved, as the real Handan Kaya was never found. It's highly likely that the real Handan Kaya had been killed. When we look into Nail C's childhood, we find that she had been disowned and thrown out of her home by her father for being feminine as a young boy. After many years of estrangement, she reconnected with her siblings, and during the years when she was living as Handan Kaya, she visited her father, claiming to be married and to have given birth to a child. With the help of her siblings, her father accepted her as Handan Kaya, and the family reconciled. But how could her family, who knew she was actually a man, believe that she had given birth to a child? You might think that her family was also involved in this scheme, but you'd be wrong. During the times when she pretended to be pregnant, she met with her siblings while living as Handan Kaya. She had convinced everyone that she had undergone a gender reassignment surgery that enabled her to give birth to a child. However, as time passed and people became more aware of gender reassignment surgeries, they realized that even people who had transitioned couldn't give birth. But by the time they understood this, it was too late. Despite all these revelations, Tansu, the person believed to be Nail C's daughter, was convinced that her mother was too good of a person to have stolen a baby from another mother's bed. To prove that she was not Aysel Bashar's stolen daughter, she agreed to appear on Müge Anlı. She even brought along photos that her mother had taken during her staged postpartum period. Showing photos of herself as a one-day-old baby, Tansu said, "Most likely, my real mother either died during childbirth or I was adopted from someone who was in a very difficult financial situation. The person who raised me as her daughter was never a bad person. She may have lied about her gender, but that was because she wanted to live as the person she wished to be." Afterward, Tansu and Aysel Bashar went for a DNA test. Throughout the process, Tansu kept her distance from everyone, including Aysel Bashar. When asked why, she said, "I am 100% sure that I am not the stolen baby, and I'm behaving this way to avoid hurting Aysel Bashar when the DNA results come out." She added, "I deeply sympathize with Aysel Bashar's pain and fully understand why she clings to this hope." On another episode of the program, the DNA results were finally revealed. On the day of the announcement, Aysel Bashar arrived at the studio with nearly 40 family members, both on camera and off camera, as they all firmly believed that Tansu was Aysel's long-lost daughter. Everyone held their breath as Müge Anlı opened the DNA results report with great anticipation. With excitement, Müge Anlı announced that Tansu was 99.99% Aysel Bashar's daughter. The studio erupted in joy, and tears flowed. As Aysel Bashar's sons embraced Tansu tightly, Aysel, overwhelmed with emotion, fainted. Don't forget to like the video and subscribe to learn about more real crimes that have occurred in Turkey, and to support me.